Hey everyone, today we are doing part 2 of the How to Hack the Box series. This series doesn't cover how to hack a box from start to finish. This series covers more the approach on how to hack a box. So there's no one size fits all, and I thought teaching the approach would be more important than teaching how to, hack a singular box. Alright, so let's get started. So what is enumeration, since that is what this video is about? So we've done recon, and recon is the sense of, we're basically seeing what's in the area, just we're basically scouting out what's running on the box and what services there is. But then enumeration is more active in the sense of we're saying, okay, let's go ahead and look at this particular service on this particular machine and say, hey, what I want to know more about it. I want to query certain stuff. I want to ask it questions. I want to be a bit more aggressive in the sense of what I'm asking. For example, if I look at my nmap scan, let's say I wanted to go ahead and just cat it. If I wanted to enumerate the system, well, what would I enumerate first? Well, I can see here in FTP there's some files in here, so I don't need to enumerate this moment, but I will come back to it later. We have 22. Am I going to enumerate port 22 for SSH? Not really, because to be honest, unless it's an old version, it's pretty much a dead end in the sense of, enumerating it. Yes, we can see some, we can see some of the key stuff here, but that's not any use to us. We can see, what crypto is using, but that's not really useful to us right now. So you want to basically enumerate other services to see what's going on, right? So we have a few other services. This is a Windows machine, so it's got very Windowsy services, right? So in my case, I've got like 53 for domain or DNS, right? Often Windows domain controllers will have their own DNS, so that's quite a common thing for it to be open. Kerberos, sec, and this I think there's another Kerberos port somewhere as well. Kpassword I believe is also Kerberos. Kerberos is basically used for like authorization authentication to a service. I mentioned this in my previous video, but basically, let's say there's a MySQL service with Kerberos that you can use Kerberos to authenticate to. You say to Kerberos, hey, these are my credentials, give me a ticket. You can then authenticate to, say, the MySQL service with that ticket. So Kerberos is a really cool thing, and it comes basically down to authentication. It also works locally as well on a Linux machine, but from an external perspective, the reason the port is open is because you can, access Kerberos remotely. Then we have msRPC, and these msRPC and NetBIOS kind of go together. We'll see a tool in a second called enum for Linux, which literally stands for, I guess, for enumeration for Linux. The tool name doesn't give it much information as to what it enumerates, but basically the tool is used to enumerate SMB and msRPC, basically. And then we have LDAP, which is, I mentioned again in my video, Microsoft Windows Active Directory services. Basically, what it does is it's a big directory full of Active Directory information, names, users, groups, organizations, objects, etc. So we can see here that one of our scripts has dumped some information. This is the script msSQL This has given us the target name, which is linko developed, and then the NetBIOS name, and we're getting a little bit more of a feel for the box, right? So we know that it's on an Active Directory. We now know the computer name, and we also know the domain name, right? And then we also know the DNS computer name, and the way that it works is it kind of like hierarchically, you'll have like the domain and then the computer, and then any subcategories within, like dotted, basically prefixed. See what else there is. Nothing immediately jumping at me right now. So what I want to do is I want to enumerate basically msRPC and SMB, right? Which are port 139 and 135. Also 445, which is basically another part to SMB. Alright, so let's run the tool enum for Linux, and then the box name, -a for everything, basically. And what this will do is it will go ahead and put our information. Immediately we can see that there are these usernames. The way it has found these is by using these rids. It basically spams the rids, and then if the username comes back, it can then figure out what username that relates to based on the rid. I believe 500 to 550 is admin stuff, and 1000 plus is like non-admin stuff, right? I may be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works, right? Enum for Linux is a bit glitchy. It's a little bit messy. To be honest, it's not great, but it can give you some. But between the errors and stuff, it can give you some decent information. We can see here that the SMB shares there aren't any right now, at least given our current user privilege, right? Here we can see it's using RPC client, and what that means basically it's going to log into that msRPC port, which is here, and basically query information. I don't know if it's going to work for me. RPC client. Yep, and then it might not work. It might not actually let me in there. Yes, I can't connect to it right now. But if I did have credentials, then I might be able to actually connect to it and basically query information. So let's have a look at a few things first, right? So I mentioned to you about FTP, right? Now, this is a Windows machine, right? And although this next step is kind of exploitation based, in order to get to the enumeration, you have to kind of like go forward and backwards, right? So I in my previous video, I downloaded one of these files. I then downloaded all of the files, and then I extracted basically the EXIF data, EXIF tool of the files, right? And that gave me a bunch of information about the files, namely who created them. In my case, trying to find an example. Go ahead and grep for creator. Add a -i in there. Yeah, so here we can see basically you created some stuff. And then I mentioned to you before, well, we saw that kerberos is running, right? Well, if kerberos is running, that opens up a new area of attacks, right? And again, this is a case of experience of knowing like what to look for. So when it comes to approaching it, you want to say, all right, these ports are open. What can I do with those ports? If it's a web application, there may be a chance you can upload a reverse shell via some means. There may be a case where you can get SQL injection, which gets you access to a database, which gets you access to a password. You need to basically understand the service you're looking at and what that opens up for you, right? So I know in conjunction, if I have usernames, or at least a rough idea what usernames may look like, and it's running kerberos, I can run what is called an ASREP roast attack. I might do a video on that if you guys are interested, but basically the way that it works is I mentioned before kerberos. You can say, hey, my name is, say, Sakura. It will say, do I have an entry for Sakura, and is kerberos pre-auth enabled, which basically means I will give you a hash to your account, which you can then use in subsequent requests to then access the service. And basically the way it works is it will give you a hash and you can then crack the hash. I'll go ahead and demonstrate it now. So I showed you before we had a few like names and stuff. If I go ahead and cat names, which I create from the previous video, in the pivot API video that comes out tomorrow, today being the 5th of November. Okay, so I've got these. I can then use like get NP users. You don't have to understand entirely how this works, but basically what's happening is I'm passing these names to the machine, in my case pivot API, and then what that's doing is kerberos is then replying with basically any hashes if it has any. So in my case, I've given it a bunch of usernames. None of these actually, you can see the usernames here. None of these actually gave me anything, but the penultimate one, the second to last one, has actually given me a hash. And what that means basically is that kerberos has looked in its database, said, I found a username and it has pre-auth enabled. Here's a hash for that user. We can then crack that hash and get the username. I can then go John, like that, for example, and then it will then give me the hash. I actually have already done this, so let me go ahead and just make hash 3 to say hash 4, and then type in like this, and then John should then go ahead and crack it. Okay, I will run this first then, and then I need to go ahead and then type in show. So it's here basically that it cracked it. Show, and then now we have a password, right? So let's assume that you're doing a hackthebox machine. You've got a password from somewhere. In my case, I've got a password from this. Get NP users thing I showed you a second ago, where I got a hash, I cracked the hash, and then here we are. I've then been able to say, okay, I've got a username and I've got a password. Let me just go ahead and show you that again. So we have the username chaos at Metadata and roper 4155. I can now use that to authenticate stuff. So now I can say like I can say crack map exec. I kind of don't want it to do all that stuff SMB, and I can go in to be like chaos, and then their password of roper, assuming I copied that. I can then authenticate. You can see here that I got a successful authentication. It's not so obvious, but if I go ahead and put an A there, which is obviously now wrong, we now get an error. Okay, so now what we can do is we can now then go ahead and then use crack map exec to then enumerate the enumerate the SMB shares. If I can now do like, I think it's like dash shares. This tool will basically now just tell me what shares are on the machine. Now you can see here, now we have some extra shares. If I now go ahead and like say, remove the the username and the password and run the same command, it doesn't work. We don't have any creds, right? We can't access anything. But now we have creds, we can now enumerate the SMB shares, right? And on top of that, we can then say use RPC client. It may work. I haven't actually tried this, but you can always give it a go. Chaos, and then give a paste. Yeah, see now we have RPC client right now. We can be like enum dom users, I think, yeah. And now we can basically see all the users on the machine. So do you see how what I've done is I have taken the number of files on the FTP, like these files here, right? I've then extracted the usernames because I know that Kerberos is running. That then enables me for a pre-auth attack or get MP users or kerberosing, all the same sort of thing. And that has then given me a hash. I then got the hash and cracked the hash. Let me go ahead and just go back up to where I was. Got the hash. So I passed the names in to get MP users. Kerberos then gave me a hash. I then cracked the hash. I then have now got a username and a password to some kind of service. I've then thought, okay, well, if I have access, if I have access to that service, I can maybe try other things. So now RPC client works, which is cool. It now enables me to, basically do all this stuff. I can now, enum, I think it's like DOM, like enum and domain groups. And then this one will give me all the groups. If I go ahead and just run this again, now we can see all the groups, and we can see that as a developers group and that kind of thing. And there's plenty of like commands. And if you don't know how to run, if you don't know what command to run, Google RPC client or just type in help, and often you'll be given what you're after. Okay. I thought it was in a more prompt, but never mind. And yeah, we can basically query various information. We can go like query user, and then we can then be like chaos, and then it'll give me the information. Here we have chaos. This is their name, and it basically tells me all the information about that user. If I then go ahead and say like superfume, may give me more information. Antonio Linio, see like Kari. These are users from that list that I looked at before. We can basically see information about supplicants, when they logged on, when they didn't log on, and that can sometimes give us information as to, the next step, really. Okay, so hopefully that kind of gives you a brief overview when it comes to, basically taking information and feeding it back into your thing. So as I mentioned before, we got using a password, we then went to RPC client, and now we viewed it. But there's not only RPC client, there's also like SMB, which we can obviously then look at the shares. Let me go ahead and just go back to where I was. Yep, shares. And then let's say we go into the share, and we can now view the content of said share. Maybe I can even execute a command, although I don't think I will be able to. We'll see. Yeah, it didn't actually work. But now we have the shares, we can then go and view the shares. So if I go ahead and now be like SMB client -u, I was hoping it will autofill. Percent Rupa 4155. I think that was their username. I am not sure. This never wants to work for me. Go ahead and just check the username. Yeah, 4155. But basically, we can then go ahead and access that directory share. Let me go ahead and see if I can hold down. I don't know what the thing is about checking my notes and it going over my screen. It should work. Maybe it's like -n, and then it needs to be like net log on. Okay. Pause. We can try say this, which will just give us what we're after. So in my case, I'm doing SMB client, the name of the host, the share, user, and then just that. And then now we have access to the SMB share. And now we can go ahead and like cd help desk. And then cd help desk. And then we can obviously go and list and then, say and get whatever, or I think it might even just be get in this case. And then the name of the file, whatever. So that then lets us basically download files, all right? So when it comes to enumeration, as I said a few times, it's a case of getting as much information as you can given the access you have, right? So in my case, I didn't have any credentials, and the way to get credentials was to try that kerberos attack, where I basically went into FTP. I took down all the EXIF data. Then I used that names thing, get NP users, which then gave me the hash. I then got a username and password from said hash, and then I can then use that information to then, group 4155. And then I can then use that hash to use that data to then enumerate. And again, like this literally commands as enum. So I mean, it must be it just links up, enum dom users equal to enumerate domain groups or domain groups or domain users, etc. So hopefully that gives you a rough insight. Again, this video isn't a how to do all the enumeration. It's simply an approach, simply an example of me doing some enumeration and showing you how you can go ahead and do it. I would actually like to do a really in-depth video of basically all the different ports and how to enumerate them all, but I think I'm probably going to have a separate video to be like how to enumerate SMB, how to enumerate NetBIOS, how to enumerate LDAP, etc. So that concludes the enumeration video. Again, it's not a case of showing you all the ways to enumerate. It's simply a case of showing you, okay, so I found FTP. I was then able to then use existing knowledge of existing ports, i.e. kerberos, to then launch a more directed attack using usernames to hopefully get a hash. In my case, I was successful in getting a hash. I then got the hash, then cracked the hash, then got a username and password. I then used that username and password to then access stuff I couldn't previously access. I then could review information about the system, who's on it, what's running, and that kind of thing. So hopefully it gives you an insight as to the approach. Again, the video is simply into the approach. I'm going to do a proper video on the actual, this is how you enumerate X service, X platform. If you watch my Hack the Box videos, you'll see me go from 0 to owning a machine, and there's going to have all the steps in there: recon, enumeration, exploitation, privacy, etc. So hopefully this proved helpful, and like, comment, subscribe, always looking for always looking for any feedback. And I will catch you in the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye.